You're listening to the Survivor Sweat Podcast with Mike Buchmiller and Russell Rosenblum. If you're looking for strategy articles and just about everything Survivor, head to survivorsweat.com. Now, let's get to it.
All right, welcome back to Survivor Sweat Pod number 5. I can't tell if the season's like flying by or dragging on.
It's flying by. It always flies by. I mean, especially you look at the fantasy football entries we have. I always look up. It's like, oh God, quarter of the season's done. Half the season's done. You're, hoping to make the playoffs soon. No, I was thinking about that the other day. So I just know that, the sweat on this is just brutal. But anyways, introduce myself. My name is Mike Buchmiller and my partner over here, Russell Rosenblum. We were the Jed entry. We split this thing last year, so you can call us champions if you want. And we get to wear our jackets, maybe yours for the second time. This is the third time I've ever worn my jacket. And my wife doesn't let me wear this out too often. No, it doesn't make it to the dinner reservation. It doesn't help too much, no. No. We got our big check with us again. We do. But you like the smaller check. I do. That one's gone, though. It's in the bank long time ago. The one that cash. Yeah. Exactly. My wife made sure of that. Yeah, good call. Wonderful. Now she wants another one. Oh, geez. All right, so we're back again in the studio here, and we survived. Which is actually surprising because one of our entries was on the Broncos. The Broncos. Yeah, if you can remember last week, we were debating whether or not we would land on the Broncos, and if so, how many, and what was the emotions of possibly pushing that button. Right, it was tough, and we talked about, we've been burned so bad by the Broncos this year, and it was the psychology. I think we've lost about half our picks. It was a psychology of, had we not taken them at all, we'd be more inclined to take them. I don't know, but at the end of the day, we looked at it, and the numbers really, it spit out that we should take at least one on them, maybe two. We ended up sucking it up and taking one, but it was hard to push the button. It was even harder still to watch the game. After somebody throws a 70 burger on you, it's hard to push the button whether you took them the first 2 weeks or not. But how good did you feel about that pick in the first half of the game? Oh, God. Well, the same as I did on Minnesota. Felt bad. Minnesota, at least if you're looking in game, Minnesota stayed favorite the whole time. They were never a dog. Yeah. Denver became a pretty steep dog pretty quick. Well, one of our partners didn't think that. No, that's true. I mean, one of our I didn't even really think about it. It was obvious, but one of our partners pointed out to us, this is crazy. We have half of our entries on two teams that have no wins. Right. And he goes, they're two of the 3 winless teams in the NFL. And I said, actually, they're 2 of the 4 winless teams in the NFL because the other 2 teams are the ones that are playing. Yeah, he was trolling us pretty good in game. And as I had mentioned to you afterwards, we basically get free rolled. So we're geniuses when these two... No, we're not geniuses. That's why we're getting free rolled. We look like complete clowns when they lose. And don't worry, when they both won, granted barely, he came out and goes, it was great. I was just curious how we ended up there. There was never I hated that. I guess you guys have a good track record. So exactly. We'll carry on. If they lose, it's like, what the hell are you doing? Give me the logins. Exactly. That's going to be the next. Give me the logins. Oh, gosh, I love it. All right, so to recap week 4, only 96 hit the skids, so 3.9% went down this week. We still have 2,383 remaining of the 9.267 million pot and entries. 74.29% of the entire pool has been eliminated through week 4, including the 5 no picks. Last year, through 4 weeks, 20% survived, so we're approximately 5% off the pace. How do you feel about that? It's this week was it's odd because it was a little frustrating, despite the fact it's the first and only week this year we got all of our entries through. Right, so we had 8 in and we got 8 out, which is great. Yeah. But it was frustrating in that I feel like we made all the quote-unquote right decisions, and we needed a couple of, upsets the big somewhere. Favorites, yeah. Yeah, we needed a couple of big favorites to lose. The Niners or the Eagles, and the Eagles were right there. Mm-hmm. What happened to old, what was his name? The coach there for the, what was his nickname there for the Redskins?
I forget it. What do they call them?
I hope it's not the nickname that our partner gave him. I'm not using that nickname. Not so good.
Come up with it. Anyways, yeah. So the Eagles had a chance to go down.
Riverboat Ron.
Yeah, Riverboat Ron. That's it. What happened to that?
Yeah, no idea. I mean, the Eagles had a chance to go down. Philadelphia always seems to have a little bit of a rough time with Washington.
Yeah.
Some of our numbers spit out that we should take Philly. We dodged them. Mm-hmm. And we, certainly rooting for Washington. And I'm going to point out again, which I point out every week. I mean, the real key there was that we stayed away from the 49ers.
Yeah.
And although everybody that took them, I do wonder, the people out there, I really do wonder this. If you're out there and you took San Francisco and you looked down and said, okay, 48% of the field is on San Francisco, do you feel good about that pick, or do you not even think about that? You just think they have the best chance to win, so you're thrilled. I mean, they won.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's good if you took them.
So did everybody else.
You're not going to have them for Christmas. Correct. So did everybody else. So we took Dallas again. We took them last week and they lost. So we still had Dallas in some of our entries and kind of rolling the dice a little bit because ideally we'd like to use them on Christmas on some entries. But, we had 1.7% of the field on them and 48% on the 49ers. So
incredible.
It's again, at the end of the day, that's what you have to do to build equity in this thing.
Yeah, of course.
Money.
If we survive without using the 49ers, then I feel like we gain the equity.
We do. But you look at it this way, like if Dallas wins and the 49ers lose, we pick up, half the field is basically gone, right? Now, let's just say each team had roughly even chance to win. Not exactly, but it's fairly close. On the other hand, if Dallas loses and the 49ers win, forget us. Just if you had taken the 49ers, you're picking up less than 2% equity in the pool.
Correct.
Right? So if you think they both have about the same chance to win, wouldn't you rather pick up 48% equity when you're right rather than 2% equity when you're right? I mean, and that's the part I think that keeps getting missed, really trying to figure out which teams are going to be super popular.
So you don't want to, survive this pool and split with like 500 people?
Correct. That's not my goal here now.
No.
And it's tough. We have one of our partners that's been very, very good at this and that we've taken some of advice in the past this year and years past, even when he wasn't a partner. And he looked and he did not think the 49ers would be anywhere near that popular. And he gave us a suggestion to take mostly 49ers. Usually we either somewhat defer to him or at least implement some of what he said. This time is the first time we literally just got disregarded for the most part. We discussed it and then we just kind of ignored it. And he came back later and said, he doesn't play in Circa, he's playing in other pools. And he goes, he can't believe how different popularity rankings are in the Circa pools compared to the other pools because of the whole Thanksgiving Christmas factor. And you got to figure out which people are actually going to go and hold some teams for there and which ones are not. And Thanksgiving is always the one people are more likely to hold for. Yeah. So they're more likely to hold Dallas, which means they're more likely to burn the 49ers.
Yeah. Back to Riverboat Ron, he got that name for going for it.
Yep.
And here they are on the road versus the Eagles.
Versus a clearly better team. Whatever. One of the best teams in the NFL.
Absolutely. They have a great drive, put them down there and win the game. Mm-hmm. You go for 2 there, don't you? Yeah,
I probably would go for 2 and just try to, be done with this game. I mean, or especially if you have the reputation as the Riverboat Ron. If you have the reputation of being a very tight conservative coach, then maybe not. But
yeah, I don't want to go to overtime with that team.
No, it is what it is. You're big underdogs in the game. You're lucky to be there, right? You are. It's just the reality. And so take the best shot you got. If you think that I don't know what they think their chances of. Look, by the way, this whole thing, and I actually, we've discussed this, and it's changing topics a little bit, but not really. You could make an argument if you think you can convert a 2-point conversion, 51% of the time. You're probably always supposed to go for 2, just always, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't know what the numbers are playing out as probably somewhere between 48 and 52% overall in the NFL. So even if you take the Commanders there and you say they're only going to convert 48% of the time, it's hard for me to believe they think they have better than a 48% chance to win in overtime. You don't even know you're getting the ball. Like, you have no idea. Philly could get the ball, drive down the field for a touchdown, the game's over. You don't even see the ball, right?
Yes,
so I don't know. It just doesn't seem like a good decision there.
Yeah, it definitely felt like we were in a good position there to clip 347 entries, but they got through.
It was funny. We were in a room with somebody, though, that was a very, very big Eagles fan as we're watching the game. And so he happens to be in the Circa Survivor pool too. So we just got very quiet at the end. We didn't really want to, start rooting too loud and really kind of piss him off.
This is correct. I've learned just to let it play out.
Exactly.
It's great. So in weeks 5, 6, and 7, 41%, 46%, and 67% went down. So looking towards the future here, last year there was major carnage through week 7. It was down to 123 entries, and then it was a slow drip after that, as you know.
Sure.
So, hey, you'll never know what's going to happen moving forward.
There's a lot of randomness. I mean, I think it's really difficult to gauge. If I had to really guess, and your sample sizes are really, they're very, very low. I mean, maybe you've looked at this, maybe we're looking at it for 3 or 4 years. And even if you could find a way to look back 10 years and figure out who you might take or who the big favorites were, it's tricky. If I had to guess, I would think you're going to end up with things like weeks 1 and 2 should normally be a little painful because even though you have every team to choose from, as we've discussed before, you just don't know that much about these teams coming off their off the offseason. And then I think you're going to end up running into some problems in the middle of the season as well, just because you've used a lot of your good teams.
Correct.
Then at the very, very end, sometimes it can be some parts easier, some parts trickier, depending on who you end up having left. And it can be just completely accidental, but you look at week 20 as circa goes, obviously there's no 20 weeks, but your 19th and 20th entry in week 17 and 18 in the NFL. Did you happen to have teams that are still fighting for a playoff spot?
Yeah.
Or do you have teams that, do you have, no one's going to have Kansas City left in week 20, but do you have Kansas City left in that last week of the year and they're sitting Mahomes and they're sitting a couple of defensive guys and they really don't care?
Yeah, you'd hate to hold that pick and then not use the best resource on the team.
Or imagine you got, you have Dallas or the Eagles, and I don't know that they're playing the last week of the season. I know they have division games, but if they're sitting there and they're playing for the division, they may be playing for something. So it's tricky in that, and we got a long way to go before discussing that, but trying to figure out. So the one thing we did last year, we sort of held nobody for the last week 20, and we sort of held like 7 teams, but they're all like 7 mediocre teams that could be likely to be fighting for a playoff spot.
Sure.
An example could be anybody in that, what is it, the NFC South, like that New Orleans, Tampa Bay division. Who knows, right? So look at some of the matchups there. I'd hold a couple of those teams. Any of them could be fighting for a playoff
South's
spot.
wide open. There's a lot of divisions that are wide open this year for sure. So great strategy there for sure. So after the picks were revealed, we popped on the Survivor Sweat X handle. And
I think before they were revealed, after they were locked.
After they were locked. Yes, after they were locked. So 4:00 after they were locked, we popped on the X handle there for Survivor Sweat. Follow us if you like. And we gave a little reasoning for the picks and discussed a little bit more how we landed on that. So, in our discussions, we believed upwards to 50% of the pool would land on San Francisco and Philly. As it turns out, 62%. So we were right in the ballpark for that. I think we thought Philly would be a little bit more, San Francisco a little less.
We did. But the key there, it's all the same sort of logic. What's happening is we think people are moving away from Dallas in that example.
Yep.
Because we had numbers that would have, theoretically, if it's not a circa pool, more people would be looking at Dallas. So we had some people moving away from Dallas and moving away from the Chiefs. And the question was, where are they going to put those entries? And we thought they'd be a little more evenly split between the Niners and the Eagles, and they weren't.
After Dallas's stinker with Arizona and Patriots coming into town, I know a lot of sharp money jumped on the Patriots right away. So that cooled some people on those picks. Because when you take Dallas, you want them against, theoretically, Arizona. Didn't work out. But so
I don't, because that's when everyone else is going to be on Dallas. Of course, we were too, and that's one of the reasons I don't.
Correct. So 62% were on San Francisco and Philly. So obviously we were big Arizona and Washington fans. Just didn't happen.
I will say Arizona gave us a little bit of a survivor sweat.
Yeah.
Because like they had like a 99-yard touchdown drive, and it wasn't a drive with some large pass interference call or some 60-yard pass. I mean, it was literally like 4-yard plays, 8-yard plays, 9-yard plays, scrambles on third downs, and they do manage to get in the end zone and score. They're just
proven
outmatched.
To be scrappy over there. So, I mean, they're a lot better than anybody anticipated.
I think so. I do think, I always wonder about this, even if management and ownership is hoping to tank and get the first-round draft choice, there's only so much you can do. You put the players in the field, and if they tank, they don't have jobs.
So those individuals that were planning on hunting the Cardinals with their picks, I don't think they're going after them too strong anymore.
it doesn't look like they're going after them as strongly anymore. Now you'll get people going after, Carolina and maybe even New England and some of these other clubs out there.
Sure. We thought 8 to 10 we're going to land on the LA Chargers. We always call them the Clippers, the LAC. The metrics showed that Vegas was going to put up a fight, and I was kind of interested to see how O'Connell was going to look. And I mean, the offensive line didn't do what, it's hard for him to throw when Khalil Mack's laying on you.
It's tough. And again, it's the whole, we've said this last week, and everybody out there, I'm sure you've heard this to death. The game's won and lost in the trenches. And At the end of the day, you look at, it's really hard to judge O'Connell. I mean, somebody was commenting to me that he looks, terrible out there, looks petrified out there. I go, okay, well, you're taking a rookie quarterback in his first start on short notice with a bad offensive line, and then Devontae Adams out for almost half the game. So I don't really know how much you're going to expect from him there. If you want an example of a really bad offensive line and try to figure out if you want to blame the quarterback, just look at the Giants game. I mean, I don't know. People are saying they shouldn't have paid him the $140 million or whatever he's getting. It's true they shouldn't have, but one of the reasons they shouldn't have done it is because there's no point without an offensive line.
Right.
I'm not a huge Daniel Jones fan, but it's neither here nor there. If you're going to spend, there's just no point in spending the money on the quarterback if there's no one to protect him. It's a waste of time.
Yeah.
And I will give Daniel Jones some credit for a guy that, we always talk about when someone's in a contract here, they'll usually play up, and once they get the contract, sometimes they don't. He's putting himself out there. I mean, he's scrambling right down the middle of the field. I mean, he's exposing himself pretty good for a team that doesn't really have a great chance to win too many games.
Sure. Well, 11.7 landed on the Chargers, and as it turns out, the Raiders actually had a shot in the game. I mean, it came down to the wire. The coach over there for the Chargers went for it again. And, Las Vegas had a chance.
And he got bailed out again.
Yep, and he got bailed out again.
Coach of the year.
Coach of the year. 37-1 coach of the year. We landed on him. How's that looking right now?
That's good. I wouldn't have mentioned that we landed on him, but sure.
No. Yeah, exactly. The Chiefs had a much lower ownership as we'd felt at 6.5%. So we felt like that was a free square. We didn't want to use a lot of our equity on them, but we wanted to land on them. And it looked like walking into last week, that kind of seemed like the free square, the free play. It looked like Kansas City was the team that was just going to get the win and move on.
Correct. I mean, technically they did. It was a hell of a lot more of a sweat than I thought there would be. The beginning of the game, it looked pretty easy. Yeah. But, it's the NFL. It's the closest to a free square we're going to find, but the NFL doesn't have any free squares.
Yeah. And then we landed on some Dallas, and they were at 1.7% ownership, even smaller than we'd thought. And so, we were happy to walk away with some Chiefs, some Dallas, and Minnesota and Denver, and just hoping to get through and hoping one of the two big favorites would go down. But we all moved on.
You're right. We're hoping for the first two, but even the first three. Mm-hmm. I mean, even the Niners, the Eagles, the Chargers, any of them go down, we're in pretty good shape. And, you don't even mind the Jaguars going down there, too. Yeah. It's not a huge number, but it's some.
And actually, it was a little bit more Denver than we anticipated with the entries. We discussed on the pod last week, and you said a number.
I did. I sort of pulled it out of the air. It wasn't like I was researching it. But yeah, I said, do you think we'll have more or less than 40 people?
And I took the under. I lost another under.
You did? Yeah, you're not good at unders.
I'm the worst at unders. I will not push the button on an under. Just incredible.
It's true. When Mike likes an under, he actually hands me the phone and goes, you have to hit the button. Not going to do it.
Yeah, so we thought 1% to 2% would be on there. You were right. We're dead on. But 67 took them, and I'm sure they were uncomfortable as we were. And I remember we were watching the games and having Minnesota on one screen, Denver on the other screen, and I literally, I just blurted out, like, how the hell did we go 20-0? I mean, it's incredible.
And in fairness, by week 3, we only had 2 entries. By week 5, we only had 1. So we ripped off the 15 just on literally 1 entry that went. It's really impossible. And I'm not saying it's any great stroke of genius, because we're also avoiding the biggest favorite every week. There's some skill, of course, but there's just a lot of luck. You got to get really lucky in the NFL.
I just remember my heart beating a little bit, and I'm just like, how did we do this? Like, it's just unreal. So, and then I kind of remembered last year about some of the emotions and going through the final, 5, 6, 7 weeks, and just going, wow, do I want to do this again? It's a lot.
The answer is yes.
The answer is yes, 100% yes. And I mean, it's a lot of fun, and that's why we say it's the best contest in the history of football contests, because the sweat you get, the survivor sweat you get each week of these picks is just it's just incredible. It's an incredible feeling.
You know, I remember some people in the professional sports betting space, I think Haralabas was one, and he talked about how he never really got that emotional when watching basketball. He knew he made the right bets, and they're in, they're fine. But I know most people that do bet sports, even great people that bet sports, you get emotional. The bet's in, and there's nothing more you can do, but you still get emotional, and that's part of the passion, and it's part of the fun of it. That's why people like that can't enjoy their work, because it's incredibly stressful. When you lose, you should have a good time, when you win too. Yeah,
I have no more eligibility left. I cannot play. And,
you sure?
And I'm out of the coaching game, so all I can do is we can just put the picks in and let it take off from there, of course. So, as we do each week, we looked back and saw what our Survivor champion picked. So Alex Brown picked Brown A. As we know it, he had 3 picks, and he took all on the Niners.
Well, he's still alive.
He is still alive. I don't think he can pick them again, though.
It doesn't look good, no. Unless he's got some more picks hidden away somewhere.
No. Of course. Also, trolling the X handle, I saw the Survivor Atlas leaderboard, and I clicked on it. It's a really cool little app that has been put together. I'm not sure who the gentleman or lady that put it together, but it's a wonderful app. And I checked on there, and it looked like it's a way that you could track track entries. You could see who's picking what. Obviously, you can get that off Circa, but it's a little bit more user friendly for it. And you can see there are several individuals that they have 10 picks, and they just take the same team each week over and over and over. So,
I mean, and again, we've talked about this before too, and I still don't have a clear answer for this. If you make it deep, like to Thanksgiving or whatever, with all of your entries, and you've got basically every team available, it probably is a pretty huge edge. On the other hand, you're much less likely to make it very deep. So maybe even now we're always trying to hedge a little bit. Like even when we have 4 entries on one team, 3 on another, I'm always kind of pushing us. Let's at least get 1 on some other team, because any 2 teams losing, it's reasonably possible in the NFL. 3 big favorites losing is very, very improbable.
Maybe it's the poker version of the solver. Maybe we got some solvers in this thing.
Could be.
Yeah, great. All right, so that wraps up our Week 4 recap. We're going to take a little break here, and we'll be back momentarily.
Be back for Week 5.
Yes, sir.
Time for a message from our sponsor. Stay tuned, and we'll be right back with the Survivor Sweat Podcast.
If you live out of state but want to enter any of the biggest football handicapping contests in Las Vegas, you've come to the right place. Football Proxy is the most professional proxy service in Las Vegas and can serve as your trusted proxy to enter your picks each week for the Super Contest, Circa Sports Millions, or Circa Survivor contests. What makes Football Proxy different from other proxies? Well, like other proxies, we have late selection deadlines and an easy-to-use web portal to submit your picks each week. But, unlike other proxies, we allow our customers to change their picks anytime before the pick deadline, which is crucial when gathering last-minute information. Ask another proxy if they allow you to make changes to your picks and see their reaction. It's what makes us the top-rated proxy service in Las Vegas. To get started, fill out the contact form and a representative will contact you to answer any questions and schedule an appointment. Then book your trip to Las Vegas and meet us at the designated casino to get signed up. Once the season starts, sweat the action all season long with your picks. Schedule an appointment today and compete against the world's best for your chance at millions.
All right, we are back to look ahead, part 2, Week 5. If we were to prognosticate our Week 5 percentages, where is everybody going to land?
Well, some of the early numbers that are out, which are not necessarily based on Circa, and so I'll kind of try to give some rough adjustments for that, but just Survivor pools in general. These are early. It looks like Detroit's probably going to be the biggest, the most popular team of the week with somewhere close to 40%. Miami at about 35-ish%. And then you kind of fall off really sharply to like Washington sub 10%, Buffalo, Cincinnati, Baltimore, all under 5%. Philadelphia, Atlanta, Kansas City, the Jets are like 1%. And then there's just nobody, right? So those look like about all the picks. I've got to think that you're going to have some people pulling away from Detroit and Miami because they're both Thanksgiving games.
Yeah.
Some people will pull from Detroit. It's also possible some people that might pull from Detroit and go to Miami, or might pull from Miami and go to Detroit because they're just holding the other one for Thanksgiving. They may not be holding both.
Sure.
Tough to say. I do think you'll probably have more than 4% on Buffalo just because you're going to get people moving off of Detroit and Miami down to Buffalo. And I don't know how many people are going to move to Cincinnati, but I would say Cincinnati probably about 7-8%. Buffalo, probably closer to 10. Washington, probably closer to 12 to 14. Detroit, Miami, instead of 40% each, maybe 24% each. It's early, but I still think you break 50% between Detroit and Miami. I think you'll be over 50% between the two teams.
I agree. Yeah, with Miami and the Lions, what we've learned so far leading up to week 5 is that people aren't afraid to hit the button when there's future value on certain teams in certain weeks that we all know are very, very important. So, you have the 2 outliers. Then you got the Thursday night game with the Commanders at the Bears. The Bears now on a 14-game losing streak. Talk about if the coach doesn't get it done, if they don't get a win, that, on the extended break here with the Thursday night game, he could be out of a job. Could
be. I saw something interesting the other day. I know this is just, random people on X, so it wasn't like anybody particularly credible, but they were talking about, should Justin Fields be traded to the Falcons? And I just was like, I almost bust out laughing. And it was just an interesting comment because I said, he could really do very, very well there with the offensive weapons that the Falcons appear to have and not be using. And it begged the question as to whether it's the coaching in Atlanta, whether it's the coaching in Chicago, Fields isn't looking great in Chicago. No. I don't know how much value he has in a trade to another team. And like I said, I don't think I doubt this is really being discussed, but it does create an intellectual exercise of what's the problem in Chicago and what's the problem in Atlanta. But specifically Chicago, Fields doesn't look good, but he looks like he's got no confidence. They looked reasonable in the first half, but then when you come back and when you end up losing that game, I don't know mentally what it's going to do to you. It's easy to say they're professionals, they shake it off. It's hard to shake everything off.
Yeah, he had a great first half, unfortunately for us, because we were holding the Denver ticket. With that being said, second half, Denver came on strong. Fields didn't get it done. Maybe the questionable call on 4th down to go for it. I mean, they didn't convert, thank goodness. And, the rest is history. But after you lose 14 games in a row, I mean, we lost 2 with Denver, and we didn't want to push the button on week 3.
Right.
14 games in a row, I mean, that's a tough mental state to go back into the building and try to get ready on a short week to go and play in Washington. But so we'll see if anybody lands on the Commanders there. They obviously had a heartbreak themselves in an overtime game. I know you mentioned the Bills, and we had this debate, or not a debate, but you discussed a hotel debacle?
Yeah, I didn't even understand this. I heard this. I couldn't even believe this. I heard this during the morning game, and they were discussing how Jacksonville, they have the back-to-back games in London, and how they were forced to change hotels between games. That Buffalo had the hotel they were in for the first game, so they had to stop midweek and switch hotels. Now, I'm sure most people out here have traveled at one point or another. Changing hotels, I mean, it's a pain in the ass, right? And so you're a multi-billion-dollar organization. Somebody said to me, well, that might be the home team hotel as opposed to the away team hotel, and so Buffalo's going to be considered the home team in one, and Jacksonville was the home team in the other. But I think at the end of the day, if I'm the ownership group there, I disregard all of that, and if I have to, I book a totally different hotel. I'm not going to make my players move. Somebody said, do they have a lot of hotels? I go, it's London. They probably have more hotels than almost anywhere in the world, right? So you look at things like that, and it just always makes me wonder what's going on.
Yeah.
Is there some, CFO there that's saving, $20 a night on the room? Like, I don't know what's going on there, but it seems almost impossible. It's got to be some version of like gamesmanship. Well, look, put it this way. If Jacksonville reached out to Buffalo and said, hey, do you mind if we stay in this hotel? I would say, yeah, I mind. Get out. Right? I mean, if you're dumb enough to put yourself in a position where you have to move, I mean, it just seems crazy. I'm sure I didn't really research it. I'm sure there's probably some answer out there. And I'd like to think there's some good reason, but sometimes I always look back when I say, well, they must know better. There must be some good reason. Yeah. And then I learned the reason was just poor preparation. But this isn't like some game in Jacksonville got hurricaned out and they moved it to London. I mean, they know they're playing there.
This was planned, yeah.
I just can't understand that. And they knew they had
the back-to-back.
Correct. I mean, it's such a no-brainer to pick up at least a little bit of edge with a team flying out there. You're out there a bit longer. You're playing a tough team. Make it as easy on your players as you can, right? Just don't start switching around. It's strange to me, for sure. Yeah. And that creates another dynamic in that game. I mean, Jacksonville's been out there. The team's decent. Buffalo, of course, they're Buffalo. They're one of the elite teams in the NFL at this point, and they got to travel out there. But then you got Jacksonville moving around hotels. Does that play a role in this thing? I don't know. It can't play a positive role.
No.
It can be neutral or negative, and that's about it.
Sure. So the Chiefs are not far down the line there on a possibility, but I mean, who has the Chiefs left? And are they saving them for Christmas, the Christmas game? So at the Vikings could be an interesting spot.
Yeah, and you even look up a little higher. I'm sorting, by popularity, right, as opposed to by spread. So, but if you look down at, say, technically it'd be further down the list, a little higher on popularity, but the whole like Cincinnati, Arizona thing, right? So we talked about beginning of the year, everybody is going to be looking for whoever's playing Arizona whenever they can.
Sure.
And it's tough when they're division games because you only get one crack, you don't get two. So this is not a division game, not even a conference game. And Cincinnati's been awful.
Yeah.
And Arizona's looked good, and I have a feeling that it's a trap game for someone. I'm just not quite sure who.
Not sure who.
We really haven't spent time looking up that game too tightly, but it's interesting. It's hard to imagine we land on Cincinnati anywhere. They've just looked really, really bad. And I can't, in Survivor, I'm not going to take Arizona. I might look at something if you get a reasonable money line or something like that. Some sort of good bet someplace.
Yeah, you got to think the people that are planning ahead, and tracking this and pre-planning their weeks and so on, how far out you want to do this. But that's most likely a predetermined pick.
See, and that's what we've talked about. This is the problem, right? You can have this great plan, and then suddenly you look up and you go, well, you know what? Cincinnati looks pretty bad. Arizona looks a little better.
Yeah.
So I don't know. If you've planned preseason to just take Cincinnati, are you still doing it?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that's...
This is the metaphorical Mike Tyson. Like,
correct.
We all have a plan until you get
punched in the face. And Cincinnati's been punched in the face a few times.
Yes, they had. So this game, if the look-ahead line was Cincy -7, that thing dropped.
Oh, I didn't realize that was the look-ahead line. Yeah, it dropped pretty significantly. It dropped from, 7 to 3?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a massive drop in the NFL.
Yeah. So, the eye test and what's going on in Cincy. And I have my reasonings as to why it's going to happen. I don't see how we can land on Cincy, but I mean, stranger things have happened. We landed on Denver last week. And if you want to include Denver, you got the Denver Jet. We got Broncos Jets here.
So which team do you land on?
Well,
I mean, technically Denver's a favorite.
They are a favorite for sure.
And you actually have, the quarterback that we're sort of relentless about. And he showed up and had a good game. So for the Jets, he had a very good game. And, he blamed himself when they lost. I don't know if you saw the post-game interview stuff with Harrison where... it was pretty bad.
He played his ass off. I mean, but, he left it out there. And that's all you can ask because you want a guy that's going to go out there and compete and not be gun-shy. And, I mean, they were down 17-0.
To Kansas City.
Yeah.
It's not like you're down 17-0 to Chicago. I mean, they're down 17-0 to Kansas City, and the guy really showed a lot of heart. I give him a lot of credit. But I don't, I can't imagine, I don't know, like, what percentage of the people are on that game. I can't, between the two teams, do you think you get 15 people? 20 people between. I could actually see some people on the Jets and some people on Denver. Not a lot. It could be two.
There are some masochists out there for sure.
But I think you'll always get some kind of bizarre picks out there. But
sure.
It's certainly not a spot I'd be looking or
and is the bizarre pick to take the Jets now, or is the bizarre pick to take the Broncos?
The bizarre pick clearly is to take the Jets. Anytime you're taking an underdog, an outright underdog, it's always kind of a bizarre pick. But it'll be interesting.
Yep.
The Jets initially look to have more. I mean, it's just so teeny. It's like the Jets are looking at like sub 1% popularity being taken. Denver's stone zero. So it looks like the Jets might be slightly more popular, despite the fact they're underdogs. It's very strange.
Yeah,
just be New Yorkers.
So we talked about that. Miami and the Lions would have the lion's share, no pun intended, of picks this week. Do you think with the bye week starting this week that because there's less teams to select, is there more concentration or is this just random?
I think it's somewhat random. I mean, there's correlation to that randomness, right? Yes, there's going to be fewer games to choose from. For example, taken to the extreme, you look at Christmas, which only literally has 3 games, or Thanksgiving with 4. Of course, you're going to have a higher concentration of things. Although this Thanksgiving, you could end up with things spread out a little bit because it started off with maybe 1 or 2 games playable. Now maybe 3 of the 4 could be.
That's true.
Maybe 4 they could actually be playable. So you might end up with an interesting spread. It'll be. I'm curious to look, and maybe I'll use the Atlas to see what this looks like in a few weeks as you're getting down there with specific
entries. You add the factor that Dallas and San Francisco are at it this week. So I mean,
no one's. I think that's a stone zero. I don't think, I'm serious. I don't know that anybody's going to take any of that this week, but who knows?
Yeah, it's rare when it's stone zero. But
I guess my totals, between both teams, 5 entries, and that's out of, 2,300 or something. I just, I don't think anybody had anything on Miami Buffalo last week. There are just certain games that week 1, you'll get people on almost every team, but by now a lot of those have been eliminated.
Yeah, every week's interesting. This will be the same. And so we'll see where everybody lands. It'll be fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great.
All right, you wanted to take a look ahead?
Well, yeah. I'm always looking way ahead, as I'm sure other people do as well. And there's just 3 teams that have 7-point spreads, in the week 6 matchups. And it's the Miami, the Chiefs, and the Bills. It's these same teams popping up week in and week out. And so
it's going to continue to be that.
At some point, these guys that take these heavy concentration on one specific teams and the favorites, they're going to run out of teams to pick.
Sure. Although if you can get, Buffalo, Kansas City, Miami, Philly, that gets you through 4 weeks. So here we are, week 5.
Week 5.
But yes, and they're going to continue to be the big favorites just again and again and again. It's no real great surprise. Initially you're going to have some interesting games with, Baltimore, Tennessee could prove to be interesting because they're not one of the bigger favorites. Jacksonville, Indy is not one of the bigger favorites going into week 6. Those could end up being kind of interesting plays. The Rams, Arizona will be interesting because everybody's trying to, fade Arizona, but I don't know what people are going to look at for that. So those I think will be some of your more interesting ones, maybe even Dallas at the Chargers. If Dallas looks good this week. But yeah, amongst your top picks, you're going to have Buffalo as the big favorite. I think people that haven't used them up yet may use them up against the Giants because although they have a lot of good matchups, you're not really looking at them for Thanksgiving or Christmas. So, you can use Buffalo in, they're always going to be big favorites. You can use them in week 6, week 7, week 8, week 10, week 11. There's a lot of choices.
Talk about a team that's hard to figure out.
Buffalo.
The Tennessee Titans.
Tennessee. No kidding.
1 week, from week to week, they can beat the best teams and lose to the absolute.
They can, but it's again, you're absolutely right. I'm not trying to discount this, but it's the NFL.
It's a game of matchups.
It's a game of matchups, and we've talked about this before, the Super Bowl where Peyton Manning had the first snap go over his head for a safety, Seattle, right? And Manning was big favorite, but they lose. Everybody that bet Seattle's like, I told you, they can't run with us. But at the end of the day, you just don't know. If that one snap doesn't go that way, the whole game is going to play. You do know for sure the whole game will play differently. Sure. You don't know for sure if Seattle's going to win or lose, but it's difficult to know just from the outcome of a game if you're really on the right or wrong side. And it's, again, that's the problem. These guys are also good. They're also fast. Yeah. One injury or even one tweak where you get like a left tackle that appears healthy, but he really isn't healthy, or he turns an ankle in the game but stays in the game. It can have just profound impact.
Absolutely. Isn't that the Super Bowl sucker bet to bet the safety?
Oh, yeah. And by the way, I think if I didn't do the math, you don't really have to. And especially first score safety, right? Yeah. If you'd made that bet every year the Super Bowls ever existed, I'm sure you're profitable because that one score was so big.
Oh, it's huge. Yeah, absolutely huge. All right. Did we have anybody hit us up this week for questions?
We had a couple of questions come in, and some of them, are really not appropriate. Yes, we're both married, so sorry about that, ladies. Just kidding. Now we get to see if our wives actually watch the podcast. We did have a question from Kevin in New York. I think he's kind of bored because he's a lifelong Giants fan, so I don't know what else he has to do, but kind of sweat survivor at the moment. So he said, after a few weeks of lots of entries being taken away, how many weeks can we go with losing a small number like this week where we lost, less than 100 or more to the point, less than, say, 5% of the field? Does it adjust your plans? It doesn't really. It's sort of the illusion of an adjustment, right? So let's say that hypothetically we wanted to take Dallas for Thanksgiving, which is not our primary pick. We've used them, easy hypothetical. If we saw, 1,000 people take Dallas If Dallas wins, we get to go, well, they've already burned Dallas, right? So now we can use them on Thanksgiving when they can't. But I also know you have the opposite. If Dallas loses, you're happy because you lost 1,000 people. But now when you make it to Thanksgiving, everybody still has Dallas available, right?
Yeah,
so
correct.
It just sort of, it is what it is. It is frustrating when you don't lose entries. It's more frustrating when you lose your own entries. But at some point, it's inevitable. It's going to happen. It's very rare you go 0-16. It's very rare there are going to be no major upsets.
Yeah.
You just sort of keep plugging along. I will say the fewer upsets there are, the higher the probability there are more people remaining at the end, the higher the probability you're splitting with more people. If you win, the lower the probability people like us will still be there because ultimately we are banking on some of those big upsets to pick up a lot of equity.
Sure.
And we're going to be second or third or fourth team down the list. So there's always going to be a slightly higher probability that we get knocked out. I mean, again, you're talking about if one team's 75% likely to win and we're taking a team that's 67% likely to win or something. Clearly, the 75% is more likely to win, but it's not as if we're taking the 20% team either, right? So it's kind of balancing that out. But it's gonna go in fits and starts. As you noted, what it was a week 7 or 8 or something, you were down to 100 and some odd players?
After week 7 of last year.
Yeah, and I mean we didn't this went to the end.
Yeah.
And I remember there were 14 on Christmas. I mean, but before that there were
It was a painfully slow drip. Yeah, for
you're
sure.
not losing many at all. And so it's it just is what it is. I mean, it might change some strategies if you're very, very deep, like if you're down to week 13, 14, and there are like tons and tons of teams left. But it might not, because if your strategy is already that I'm trying to pick up equity by not taking those teams, I think that's still what you're going to do. If you found yourself in week 16, or as I've used the example before in week 18, pick 20, and there are 100 teams left, and all 100 are going to be on this one very obvious favorite, you may as well just take any other team because there's no equity. If you win, you're just splitting this thing up 100 ways. Yeah. And there's no team in the NFL that's only a 1% chance to win. I mean, that just doesn't exist. So
correct. And, as we had discussed earlier, a high concentration will be on Miami and Detroit. If those two go down this week, that could be upwards of 60, 65% of the pool.
Maybe I'll
higher.
say 50. I think I'll take the under 65, but we'll see. I mean, it could be that high, but I'm going to take under just because. And I'm saying that even though the current popularity numbers show almost 80, just because I think in Circa we're going to have some people pulling off those teams because of, and I think people, for some reason, they're more likely to save Thanksgiving teams than Christmas teams. I'm not quite sure why. Maybe because it's sooner, maybe the psychology of it. I don't know, but it has appeared that way. Yeah. And since they both play on Thanksgiving, and it's interesting that you've got two of the bigger Thanksgiving favorites, both bigger favorites earlier in the year, and it'll be an interesting dynamic to see.
Yeah, and nobody will remember the 3.9% that got clipped last week. They'll forget about that because it'll be 60 plus go down.
For sure they will. And look, you've also got the fact that Miami, I don't want to say they looked awful. I mean, the game got away from them too. They were competitive early. Their defense looked atrocious. I mean, their defense looked like they were training from Denver's defense the week before, like they learned something from...
They're playing the Giants.
Dropping 70 on them. No, I know that. No, not what I mean. I don't know if you're going to get fewer people on Miami just after last week. But sure, look, Miami's in a great spot to win the game. I doubt we're going to be on Miami here. But the reality is that I'd be shocked if Miami loses. I think they're rightfully the biggest favorite on the board.
Yep, that is correct.
All right.
Yeah, if you guys would like to hit us up or want us to answer a question on the pod, you could reach us at Survivor Sweat X handle or on the discussion board at survivorsweat.com, your one-stop shop, all things Circa Survivor. There's also a Survivor Sweat marketplace.
I'm still waiting for some people to put their picks up there if they're tired of Survivor.
Yeah, that's another thing is on the Survivor Atlas, it gives you a breakdown of what your pick is worth.
That's very cool.
In the current tournament format.
No affiliation with Survivor Atlas, by the way. We just think it's a cool site.
No, absolutely. Whoever put it together, I've been trolling it. It's really good. I like it. Kudos. Great. But yeah, it gives you some really good information. And if you want to know what your pick is worth currently in the contest, it gives you that.
Yep.
So very good. Well, we will see what happens in week 5, who survives. Again, hopefully we survive. And, I kind of hope you survive.
I don't mind you surviving. There aren't that many of you out there yet. Once we're down to like 10 and you're all listening, then I don't want you to survive.
Yeah,
but for now...
Then don't survive.
But whether you survive or not, come back and watch next week.
Please. Yep, absolutely.
All right.
Until next week.
All right,
signing off. Good luck week 5.
Good luck and
survive. Get those picks in.
Oh, yeah. Forgot about that.
Looking for Survivor strategy articles? Did you lose your last entry on a Survivor contest and wish you could rebuy? Check out our marketplace and you may find what you need. Head over to survivorsweat.com for all things Survivor. And we'll see you next week for the next Survivor Sweat podcast.